Okay, everyone, so today we are going to go over rock sculpting and some various things in Zbrush. I'm going to be outlining a method that I used extensively and I developed at Animal Logic when I was working on the feature animation in Jago. I'm going to share some of the stuff that I learned during that process to get high-res art-directed rocks, and we're going to go over some basic ZBrush stuff like interface configuration and things like that as well. So the things that we're going to be covering today are, first off, we're going to go over interface and brushes, how to customize your ZBrush interface, and make some menus. I'll go over the configuration that I use, and show you how to make one of your own. We're also going to cover saving your brushes for startup, so your brushes are, once you have your menus set up, all your brushes will be available to you when you start up, and you don't have to go into Lightbox and reload them or anything like that for custom brushes. And then the rock sculpting, we're going to start talking about rock shape and blocking, how to block in your rock shape, using noise on a low-res geo to get a nice organic rock surface. A lot of people get stuck in the beginning on just trying to make a good shape for their rock. And I think this method kind of works. At least it works for me. Then we'll get into detail, using layers to distort your rocks, masking areas to make craggy surfaces, which I'll explain when we look at the reference. Inflating your rock for custom looks as far as getting like craggy surfaces and stuff like that, because the craggy rock seems to be the one that kind of throws people. It was a rock surface. The craggy rock was a surface that I did a lot for Ninjago, so I'll go over how to do that. And then once we get the rock to where we want it, we'll go over projection from high-res to low-res mesh, various ways to do projections to get your rock ready as an asset, and maybe I'll go over multi-map exporter for normal maps briefly. So with that, let's get started. So first things first, let's take a look at some reference here. So if you can see what I mean by craggy rock surfaces, move this out of the way, grab this. So this is the reference that I'm going to be using for the rock that I'm going to make today. So you want to get lots of good reference. You want to get reference that shows the outline and silhouette of the rock, as well as different details in the rock, depending on how close you're going to get to it. This is a good rock shape that we'll probably use. It's good to get a lot of different references for your rock, because rocks have lots of different surfaces. So it's good not to just pick one rock as your rock reference. You want to pick a lot of different surfaces, because rocks will really be a composite of a lot of different things. As you can see, like on this rock here, you've got a nice soft rounded area in the back and this really rough craggy detail stuff in the front, and you have a nice flat top. So obviously if you just had this craggy detail everywhere, it's going to look fake and it's not going to look real. You can see on this rock here in the center, you've got all this breakup and then some smooth areas and then smooth areas and breakup, and that's really important in rocks. So you want some visual noise, but you also want places for your eyes to rest, because rocks have, like I said, a variety of surfaces. So you don't want detail everywhere, but you don't want it to be smooth everywhere either. and it kind of gets to an artistic balance with that. So that's the reference, and I'll bring this back and we'll look at it from time to time as well. So let's get into this. So first things first, we're in Zbrush, obviously. Excuse me. And we're going to go ahead and start making your interface. I'm just going to draw something out here just so I can get the brushes. So for your startup menu, any brushes that you've got that you want access to. So right now you can see, well, let me see, I can access my menus here. Right now when you look at your brush menu, you've got these guys. So say you have a bunch of custom brushes that you downloaded from the internet or whatnot. You want to be able to have those available, so you don't have to go to Lightbox and load or go to load brush every single time you start up ZBrush. So the way around that is you're going to go into your brush presets, which I'll show you where that is. At least this is where they're at on a Windows machine. You're going to go into your C drive, navigate to wherever you've got your ZBrush installed. And I am using 4R8, but I'm not going to go over 4R8 functions because I want this to be back compatible for people that don't have 4R8 yet. And you're going to go into Z Startup and Brush Presets. And you can see I don't have anything in there right now, but I am going to load a bunch of these in. These are brushes that I'm going to use during the tutorial. And I can go over some of these. I can put links on the video to the people that made these brushes. There's the DC brushes, which I absolutely love. And then Mount Fast is part of ZBrush. You just have to load it. It's accessed through Lightbox, but I'm going to load it in here. And Trim Smooth Border is a standard ZBrush brush as well. But I'm going to load that in. So that's where it's at. It's program files, Pixelogic, ZBrush 4R8 or R7, wherever you've got your ZBrush installed, Z Startup, Brush Presets. And you'll have access to them. So now that I've done that, I'm going to have to restart ZBrush, so those will be accessible. Let's just do that real quick. Initialize ZBrush here. I'll make sure we can see everything. And Lightbox. Let's go in here, grab a tool. Change this. Okay, so now if we go to our brush menu, you're going to see I've got all these new brushes available, and these were just the ones that I loaded in. So another thing that we can go over here is a configuration. So if you want to edit your ZBrush interface, which I highly recommend that you do, you'll see I've got this brush. I've got this set of tools over here that I've already done. And I'm not going to go over everything on how to build this. I'm just going to build a custom one right now for you guys to see. I'll put a link in the description for the ZBrush document that talks, the ZBrush documentation that talks about this. So to edit your interface, you're going to go in here under Preferences, and you're just going to enable Customize. So this enables ZBrush to be customized and all that good stuff. So under Customize Interface and UI, so if you want to create a new menu, we'll just hit Create New Menu, and we'll call this Class Demo. So now you see you've got a new menu called Class Demo, and I'm going to dock this over here so we can edit it. And first thing, let's create a custom subpalette. And to click and drag things off, it's Control Alt. You hold down Control Alt, and then I can put this wherever I want. So I'm just going to put this into Class Demo, and that creates a little palette. You can hit Control Alt and click, or Control. Oh, I think there has to be something in this first. So let's add some brushes. So I'm going to go into those brushes that I had found before that I loaded in. Let's just say Mount Fast. And I'm going to click and drag this over to the bottom. Just, it makes it easier to do that way, so I can go back down and drag it over. So I'm going to click, Control Alt, drag, and I'm going to drag it up. Control Alt, drag it up here. So now we've got this. So now that I've got something in it, I can title this, and I'm just going to say rock brushes. So now I would just load up a bunch of brushes in here. So I'll go and grab Trim Smooth Border, grab it, throw it down there, Class Demo, and add this. So then now you see we've got, now I can add as many submenus or subpalettes as I want in here. But say you want like just a little bit of a break and you want to add some more stuff in here, so I'm gonna grab some of these. I'm gonna throw this away in this interface anyways. So you've got these little like spacer bars, so hold Control Alt and say I want to just put a space bar between that, just to break up your stuff. So you don't only have to use this for brushes, you can use this for anything. So you can see like I've got all this stuff over here that say I want to add. I'm going to Control Alt, click, and I'm going to add my inflate, squeeze, noise. So, and then you just keep going with it basically. It's pretty simple. So like for this Steve Tools palette that I've got, you can see how I've broken all this stuff up into Geo Tools and masking, and I actually have this mapped to a hotkey, which I can just hit. Oh, I have to have my configuration load up, but I'll set it up with a hotkey. To make a hotkey, I think it's Control Alt. Let's see here. I'll look that up. But if you just go under, if you just search ZBrush hotkeys, there's just a key command that you can use to store your hotkeys. I haven't done it in a while, so I don't remember. So once you get all this done, you want to go to Preferences and store your configuration. I store it, and then I also save it out to another spot just in case something happens to ZBrush and I lose it. So I'm going to load, I'm going to undo this, I'm going to load my custom UI that I've already made. Here, I'm going to load this up. So you can see if I've got this map to hotkeys, which I stored with this configuration file. So you see all my stuff's there. And now we've got all these rock brushes that I'm going to use. I usually break it up so it's like block and polish and detail. Obviously this isn't strict, so I can go back and forth between these brushes. So that is how you would edit your interface. So let me bring up the reference here. That. We do want this. So how I'm going to start this rock off is going to be, I'm going to get the basic shape. So I'm going to try for something like this, probably a combination between this and this rock here. So I'm going to try to get the basic shapes in, the silhouette, make it just a strong looking rock. It's really important to do that before you start getting into detail. I think people jump into detail way too soon. You don't want to do that. So how I start a rock usually, I will just go in here. Sometimes I'll start from cube, sometimes I'll start from sphere. Let's just start from a cube. And I'm going to subdivide this a few times. Well, first I'm going to make it Polymesh 3D. Subdivide this up a little bit. Maybe, yeah, that's probably good for now. And then what I'll do is go into surface and noise. So this is going to seem weird, but this works. At least it does for me. So now you can't see it, but there's a really fine dusting of noise here. It's just the noise scale. So I'm going to move the scale way up, and I'm going to crank the strength way up. And this is going to look like it's just dodgy as shit, but you'll see what happens. So say I hit OK, and now it just looks like this weird mess of junk. But then I hit apply to mesh. So then I'll get this. So obviously that's a bit too strong. So what I'll do is I'll go to layers, I'll make a new layer, which I think when you make a new layer it automatically starts recording. Then I'm going to go back down to my noise, my surface noise here. I'm going to apply it to the mesh. Then I'm going to back it off. Just say out to like there. Bigger in scale. So this is why I use layers. So we'll just trash that, go back to our surface noise, edit it. I'm going to go to the noise scale, crank this up, and I'm going to take the strength down a little bit. Hit OK, make a new layer, apply to mesh. So that's better. Another cool thing you can do with layers is you can go past one. So if I go to 2, it's down here, layer intensity. So I can go this way. So I can push the intensity of this, and I can push it in negative intensity as well. And you can see we're starting to get some rock-ish type shapes here. So I think I'm going to go back to about here. And then you'll see that I'll be repeating this stuff quite often. It's just how I do it. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to make this a Dynamesh. It's going to say blah blah subdivision. It's also got layers, so I'm going to go back into my layers. I'm going to bake the layers, which is just this bake all button. I'm going to delete my lower subdivisions, and I'm going to create a Dynamesh. So now, as you can see, anybody that's used Zbrush, Dynamesh just basically makes this uniform grid pattern or topology over the whole shape. I'm going to switch over to my tablet here. 1 second. So now I'm going to start looking at my reference and start blocking the shape out. Start with some really large brushes. I will typically use like the planer tool. Now it fast works really nice. Inflate, clay tubes. Trim smooth borders is really great. Obviously in the beginning you're going to just use the move brush. Let me get my reference up here so I can see it. And I'm just going to start shaping this rock. Actually, you know, it's a good idea to save this first. Call this demo. Okay. So I'm going to go in here and just start going at it. One second, get my keyboard to not totally fuck up or screw up. Maybe even go. There we go. So I'm just going to start shaping this rock. And remember before I was saying I want some flat edges and some round edges. So another brush, and I don't think I've got this one loaded up, that I use all the time. We can go into here, smooth brushes, and smooth stronger. And this is just a smooth brush, but it just really polishes things very quickly. So let me just bash some of this stuff out. And then make sure you just re-dynamesh every now and then, just so your topology doesn't get too wacky. Remember, don't get too precious with any of these shapes. We're just exploring, just trying to find out what we're doing here. As far as a rock, like right now I can see that this is still too cubey. It's too much of a cube, so I'm just gonna work on getting that so it's not so. And this is, I mean, this is why a lot of people start with spheres as well, but I knew this rock had some flat table-like edges, so I kind of wanted to keep those in there, and it's easier to start with a cube for that. So I'm looking at, and if you're making this rock for a game asset, you want it to look good on all sides. You don't want any side to be boring, because you want to be able to use this in a lot of different applications, so you can reuse it. So literally you'll just like flip it around and duplicate it and flip and duplicate it over and over and over again. This happens a lot. So you'll see like your edges start to rip. The way around that is to just inflate these guys, re-dynamesh. There you go. It just happens when you get around these really sharp edges at a low resolution. Very easy to fix. Switch back to smooth border. And sometimes you'll get stuff like this where you don't want this huge cavity. I just switch to clay tubes and just fill it in. You could also use the move brush for this. I'm just being lazy. So I know this is probably pretty boring to watch, but this is the process. This is how it goes down. With clay tubes also, you can use it just hold down the Alt key in a negative. You can start shaping edges off like that. Smooth it. So let's see. You can see from this angle we can still have our cube shape. So I need to do some more drastic stuff with this. To start rounding this out. That's better. Pull some of this out. Pull some of this. I notice in the reference that there are some overhangs in this rock, so I'm going to make sure those are in there. Stuff like this. So form that up. Let's get in there. So a lot of times at this point I will go back, re-dynamesh it, and then I'm going to go back into my surface noise, back into here. I'm going to edit it. Bring that should be alright. Let's bring the strength up a bit. That, make a new layer, apply it to the mesh. Yeah, that is a gigantic mess, so let's bring it down. But you can see just a little bit like that. That's gonna add some really interesting shapes and help you a lot as far as your work, so you're not shaping like crazy. And you can do some negative. Sometimes negative works better. I'm gonna go this route. Just go here. Looks good to me, so I'm gonna bake that in, re-dynamesh it, and keep going on this. So let's grab the planer brush and start really hacking out some shapes here. I'm going to keep that overhang, I kind of like that. Plane this. And I'm just tapping this. You just want to be kind of gentle with the planer tool, unless you really want to change your shape drastically like that, which I don't. Another thing I'll do with the planer brush, which I haven't done yet, is I'll just turn the alpha. And I'll do that with a lot of these brushes, so like trim smooth border, I'll change the alpha to a square. I think now it's already there, yeah. I usually use a square alpha for making rocks, so you don't end up with, I can show you, like if I use trim smooth border with a soft alpha, you're gonna get these lumpy kind of shapes that happen. And unless you want lumpy, I just don't. I typically just use a square. It just looks better. Looks more natural. Go in here. Bash. And I'm not. I mean, a lot of times this part of the process would take some time. It may even take a couple hours. So I'm obviously not going to spend that much time. I just want to show you guys the basics of this. But I'm just going to get it to a point here that looks fairly okay. I like this ridge, but this isn't going to hold up at this resolution of Dynamesh, so I'm going to have to fix that later. So I'm just going to inflate this out for now. Once we get a higher resolution of Dynamesh, then we can do these kind of hard edges, but I'm just going to leave it. Go back in here, inflate some of this up. Inflate up this. That looks good. Back to the planer tool. Hack some of this apart. Yeah, Yeah, so this guy here is way too round. So I'm just going to go and this. Another method that works nice, like if you get a piece like this that you just don't like, you can go into your clip curve works. So you're gonna go down here and just kind of like hack that off. You can get nice edges using this method. I don't use it too much because sometimes it can look a little contrived, but it does work if you want to hack a big hunk out. Like if you want to make it look like the rock's broken, like a piece broke off. That works pretty nice. Going here. All right, this is shaping up to be good. Let me just check. Yeah, see, I like this piece, but it's not working, so I'm just gonna hack it off. Just doesn't look right. Yeah, that's better. And especially when you're making a game rock, you don't want any real distinctive surface, because you'll start seeing repeating patterns when you reuse it. So this is getting there. Let's go ahead and hack this off. Hack that off. This is a little bit too smooth, so there is a noise brush that you can use. Just kind of add in some noise to that, and then re-dynamesh it so you get some variance. Like if you want to change the size of the noise, just crank your brush up. And since we're working at a really low resolution Dynamesh, it's not going to affect the surface too much where it's going to look noisy. It's just going to break it up. So this is looking good for our rock. This edge might get a little funky, but I want to keep it anyways. Maybe trim it back a little bit, give it some hard edge. Sorry if you guys can hear that. That's the dogs barking in the backyard. Let me hack some of this stuff off a bit. And say I want to create a tabletop, because there is kind of a table on this reference. I think I would probably put it here. Yeah, here. So I'm just going to move this back out to create more of a tabletop. Yeah, that works. And then I'll just hack this back a bit. Kind of form this up. Okay, this is a good point. This is a good starting point. So let me save this. Next thing on our list here. We can start working on the more craggy stuff in a second. let's see. Yep. So we'll start distorting the detail and making some of these craggy areas. So the craggy stuff I'm talking about is this kind of stuff. Make sure you can see what I'm looking at. This kind of breakup where you get like pock marks. You get them in here. You can kind of see it happening in here. It's just where you get arid rock and it cracks and dries and breaks off. So that's what we're going to do now. So to do this, we can do it in a bunch of different ways. And it kind of takes some experimenting, but we'll see what we can do here. So let me pick an area where I want, like this is perfect. So this is a craggy area. So I'm gonna Dynamesh this at a little bit higher resolution. Get some more. Yeah, get some of that. I think that works. So one of the methods to do this, if you have a really like specific pattern of pocking that you want, you can use an alpha. So I'll just switch to the standard brush, go into my masking, and use a color spray alpha. And this is probably a bit too big, so I'm going to change the placement of this. Make it wider. And this is just going to take a little bit of experimentation here. It's still not working. Let's switch to just spray. I think it's because I'm still kind of low res here. Placement, crank that all the way up. It's still grouped too much. Huh. Okay. Let's turn our alpha on to something like this. Switch to drag. Yeah, we'll do something more like this. So it might be kind of hard to see, but you can see there's a little bit of an alpha in here. Or masking. So let me mask off some more of these areas. And I'm just holding down the Alt key to sharpen the mask up. And I'm just going to go through and start doing this type of thing. And I'll do this on the areas that I really want the craggy stuff to show up. So, go down here. Maybe over here. And if you were working on a rock for a specific shot or something, obviously you just match your reference. But I'm just going to do it wherever I want it. So now what I'll do is make a new layer just in case this gets messed up. And then I will go down to my deformation and inflate. See that it's starting to create that pattern. It is changing the rock a little bit, but that's okay because at this point we're not done with the rock shape anyways. So if you want some pebbles to come out, you can kind of do that type of thing, but we want crags, so I'm just gonna go like this, and now we've got some craggy areas. Little pock marks. So what you can do is you can also change your layer, go in and out with it. Yeah, this this is still probably a bit low res, so I'm gonna bake this in, go back to the Dynamesh, and I'm gonna go up to 1024 just for time's sake. Oop. Ooh, way too big. Let's go down to 7. Let's try this. Still too much. It's very sensitive. Let's see. Yeah. Let's go down. Try to go down more here. So do there. Sorry about that. It took a minute. So you can kind of see the craggy look a little better now. But you can also see that the whole rock is kind of smoothing out. So what we're going to do is go back down to the surface noise, turn that on, edit it, and we're going to bring the scale back way down. We're just really kind of trying to rough up the surface now. And then you'll go in, you'll edit this curve to just get and this basically just controls how much noise is applied. Obviously, I think the strength is still too high here. And you can just kind of play around with this curve to get the look that you want. I'm still kind of working on a rough surface here, so I'll add that in. I'm going to make a new layer before I apply this, just so I can amp it up. Pull it up. Yeah, there we go. So now you can see this is really uniform, and we're going to fix that right now. So I'm going to bake this in a brush that I use constantly for polishing and getting rid of too much noise. Is this guy right here, Trim Dynamic, and it works great. So as you can see, and I'll switch my outfit to square, you can start, you're going to pull off some of this noise, but it's not going to make your surface too smooth. It's still going to leave traces of the noise behind, and it works really well. So I'm not going to go too nuts on this. I'm just going to pull off some of this noise. And don't worry too much if it starts smoothing out, because we're going to add another layer of noise on top of this noise. Really, all rocks are just layering lots of noise on top of one another. But I'm just trying to keep my main shapes here, like where the rock is pinching, because I don't want to lose that. And as you can see, when you're using a square alpha, it kind of adds more detail back into the rock. Where if you were using a round, it would just look like you were painting all over this. Another thing you can use is clay polish. You can use this kind of do that to get a different type of look, which it actually worked pretty nice. So I'm going to go back to my trim smooth border, knock some of this stuff back. Maybe it didn't work too great. It's too blobby. I'm just going to continue knocking back some of this noise. I should have probably not put so much into it, but that's okay because we're just experimenting and playing here. Going on with my tablet. So this is getting a little bit round, so I think I'm going to go back to the inflate to get some of these edges to be a bit pointy again. So I'm just going to suck this in, yes, like so. So you can see when you do that inflate, it really creates nice sharp edges through all these craggy stuff. And remember, we're still dynameshed here, so I can always, when I get stuff like this, I can kind of go back through and fix it right now. Let's fix this stuff up. But you can see you get really nice, sharp, really natural looking surfaces. I put way too much noise pocking in here. You can always hold the Alt key down if you want to try to just bring these surfaces back up, like fill in the holes. You can do that too. You can see how I'm just filling these holes in. Like I said before, you don't want too much of this stuff. It'll start to look unnatural, because in nature there's lots of variation. This is getting there. Go back through some of this. That's working for me for now. So let's go back in again to our surface noise. Let's make a layer, noise, edit. So for this, we're gonna pull. Now I kind of want some overall noise over the whole rock. Scale might be a little bit better. Still way too much. So I'm going to try to choke off some of the spots here. Just to add in some breakup. Yeah, that works. Let's apply that to the mesh. Just a bit. Okay, good. Bake all of these down, re-dynamesh. So at this point, what I would do is that there is quite a bit of noise everywhere, and you have to be careful with this. But I will start to polish off, just trying to bring some of the crispness back into the rock. So I'll use the H polish brush to do that. You have to be careful with this, so you can't go too nuts. But some of these areas I want them to be definitely sharper. So I'm going to polish some of this stuff back. I'll also polish off any of these little cut marks that I had made earlier. Just try to, and you can always smooth as well, because there will be one more final layer of noise that I'll add on here. Polish this up. looks pretty good. It's pretty natural. I think this side might have a few too much of these guys. Let's go here. So another method for adding noise, and I'm just going to go crazy on this just so I can show you all these methods. You can do a mask, different types of masking. So go into the masking palette in here. You can mask by AO or cavity or smoothness, peaks and valleys. Usually I'll use cavity. It works pretty nice just to kind of mess around with holes in this. So like if you wanted to do some more pocking or like make the pocks a little bit deeper, we can do that. Which, you know what, let's give that a shot. So let's go back down to inflate. Just do a little bit. Might get some nice, too much. And you got to remember also, since this is a mask, we can just go in with our mask pen and just knock off some of this stuff. And I'm being kind of random because I still want it. I want it to look natural. And in nature, so much randomness. I'll get rid of some of this stuff. So now I'm gonna try this again. So you can see we're kind of getting like little rocks, or we can just kind of dig those back in. I kind of like the little rocks. Yeah, that looks good. Let's keep that. So now we got some kind of pebbles that are around it. So that works nice. Back to masking. So you can also do a peaks and valleys mask, which is always a little bit bigger, but this is a real good way to try to contain your edges. As you can see, it's starting to just grab edges here. So if I want to make my edges a little bit crisper, like if you start to lose them, I'm just gonna do a negative inflate to bring some of those edges back. So you can see now how it's round, sharp, round, sharp. Let me do that in a layer. Do this. Starting to get some like growth around the edges. Back here. This is eventually, it's going to start getting pretty subtle. That works. Make that Dynamesh. Go in and polish, do one more level of polishing and crisping things up here. Just to really kind of pull some of this stuff out. Let me switch to trim dynamic. glass. Invasive. And you can see trim dynamic works really well to, like, if I have too many of these pebble things, just go through and knock them out, and it still keeps the structure of the rock. That's pretty good. So now what I would do is I'm going to put one more layer of fine noise into this. Bring the scale down so it's pretty small. Bring the strength up a bit. Just to get an overall noise pattern, because there's not much in nature that doesn't have some type of noise to it. That might be a bit much. Just bump the scale up a little bit more. Yeah, that works. Apply that. Really subtle. So now what I would do is I'm going to kill off the Dynamesh. I'm going to keep this as my this would basically be my base. So I'm going to divide that. Now we're up to 1.6 million, which should be more than enough. And then I'm going to start going in and using these fine detail brushes. So I'll find spots where I want this stuff to go. Start adding them in. And I'm switching between, I'm holding my Alt key down, so I'm going in negative with these and then bringing them positive back out. So negative, positive, negative, positive. And I'm doing this kind of all over the place where I want more detail, where I think it's like lacking, or just adding places of interest. Then I'm going to go back in here with the trim smooth border. And I'm definitely going to go smaller with these edits, because now it's getting into like fine sculpting. So a lot of times, like if I'm sculpting in something like this edge, I will smooth this back out until I get the surface that I want, And then I'll go back in with one of these brushes and just add in some noise. And grab the trim dynamic and just kind of go back over it. And I can't stress how much the trim dynamic brush really helps. So like if I go back into, let's see if I can find an area like here where I think this is repeating too much, I'll just trim it out. And you can start really getting some nice variation in this. Or I'll grab the brush that I was using before and just kind of pull it over it. Switch back to trim dynamic. And there is our rock. I think I have covered all the bases that we were talking about. Let me just check my notes here. Yep. And so now, let's look at our next steps. So now we're going to go ahead and do some projection to get this from this high res rock to a lower res piece, and I'm just gonna do a quick method because I could do a whole another hour on quad draw or something like that, but I'll show you this method. I want to keep everything in ZBrush for now. So this is, we'll go into our subtools and we'll just call this our base. Say base rock. So I'll duplicate that. So how this works, you want to think of your base rock as your source, what you're going to be projecting from. So we've got this guy, which is going to be our, basically like our final mesh. So we'll just go down into Z Remesher. Let me save this first, just in case. Save that. Go down to Z Remesher, and we'll just Z Remesh this down. Let's see what we get. I think we're just going to go to a low to medium res rock for this. So we'll see how well it works. Z Remesher typically works really well. We'll just see what happens. You can also use things like the topology brush if you want to go really low res. But for our purposes, we're just going to go with this. And we've got down to, let's see, 6,000. It's pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is turn off adapt, and I'm just going to half this and Z Remesh it again, Z Remesh it again, and it's just going to keep going lower and lower. So that's 611, which is, that's kind of medium to high, so I think we're just going to go with that for now. You could always go much lower, you could always go much higher, but that'll work for us for now. And when I do projections, I'll solo the source mesh here, even though, so this projection mesh is still visible, just so I can see the results. So at this point I'm going to project. It's got polypan, I just know. So I just projected this high res onto this low res just to get a starting point. So then I'm going to go divide, project, no, divide, project, no, divide, project, fine, put poly paint, doesn't matter. We'll go ahead and divide this again and project it. We're starting to get some errors in here. Let's try increasing our distance a bit. There we go. Just not getting the right amount. So let's divide this, project all. Divide, project all again. There we go. Now it's working. Divide, project all. And we're basically going to divide up to the resolution that the rock was at in the base. So I'm going to divide this again. I think we're going to go 2 more levels up here. And it's going to start getting slower. So I think I'm not going to go all the way back up to 1,000,000 just to save you guys some time on watching paint dry. So now what we've got all this detail projected into an object that has subdivision levels. So what we're going to do, I'm going to save this because this definitely can crash sometimes. I'm going to save this. I'm going to run a mesh integrity just to make sure everything's cool. It should be fine. And then what I'm going to do is go into Z plugins, go into the UV master, and I'm going to unwrap this. So you have to unwrap it at its lowest subdivision. So now we have proper UVs on this as well. So you would export this object out, this low res object out, and then you'll subdivide this up, and so you could do this one of 2 ways. You could export your low res, export your high res, and then do normal map projection in Substance Painter, or you can go into the multi-map exporter, click on normal or displacement or vector displacement, whatever you want, but I'm just going to click on normal. You can check your map size here, and then hit create all maps, and that will create normal maps for this base object. So you would have your low res geo, and you would load that into your whatever package you wanted to, Substance, or you could just take it directly into Unreal if you already had some color maps that you wanted to use, and you would use this normal map as to make your rock look rough and high res. And that is it. Please post any questions, or if I forgot anything, or if there's anything else you would like to see. But this is basic rock creation in ZBrush. Thank you, and I will see you next time.